sports wagering. And today, although we give various types of licenses, we give Class A licenses, those big sports stadiums that we have, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm mainly going to focus on the one that's highlighted there, Class B operator. That's what the subject today is, and that's what I'm going to focus my talks. We do license other types of sports wagering management service providers, and that's Ellis Game Board Technology. That's a partner to Grand Central, but we also have suppliers and occupational. But we're going to focus on Class B operators. Okay. So the first thing is licensing application fees. And when I say licensing, I do mean the application fee. It's not the fee to get the license. It's the application process. You can see there the the Class A's. It's $500,000 for a 5-year term. Those are your major sports stadiums where the sports books are located. Those are your Nationals Park, Audi Field, Capital One Arena. Those are the big stadiums. What we're going to be focusing on today is the Class B operator, the restaurant, bars, and I say other businesses because there's no restriction in that respect. It just has to be another business. There's a few restrictions, but by and large, there's none. So you could actually have, I always say, you could have a coffee shop that decides to get into sports wagering and go through this process. However, I think it's, sports wagering sort of and bars and restaurants tend to go a little bit more together than maybe a coffee shop. Not to say discourage anybody if they want to do a coffee shop sports bar or a coffee shop sports wagering operation, but yeah, and you can. The licensing fee is $100,000 for a 5-year term. Okay. I said I'm going to focus on that, and there are a couple of other requirements just in general. And like I said, in the latter part at the end here, I'm going to go over the specifics of the licensing process. But right now, I just want to give you just an overview of it. We do have, and I think Director Whitfield mentioned the Certified Business Enterprise requirements. And so operators and management service providers, and again, operator like Grand Central, MSP service provider like Ellis Gaming Technology, they have to submit a CBE plan to the district's director of small and local business development. And among other requirements, the CBE plan must demonstrate that at least 35% of the operating budget will be contracted or subcontract to one or more CBEs. Very important. That requirement is something, as I put in the power slide there, that it's a requirement, and it's determined by DSLBD. So the Grand Central or any Class B operator is going to be working with DSLBD on that part of the process and part of the application. The other thing we have is a joint venture and reduced fees. So if a Class B operator partners in a joint venture with a CBE, the small business, holds the majority interest in the entity, in the joint venture, there is a reduction in the fees. From for a Class A that was $500,000 to $125,000, and for a Class B that's $100,000, you could reduce it to $25,000. So those are available. So that's in general. That I just wanted to give you that. It's Class B operator fee. What the term is, it's a 5-year term. It's $100,000, and then there's a CBE requirement, and then there is the option for a reduced fee. So I just want to give you that overview right now. And I'm going to be back later to give you a little bit more on the specifics on how to apply and what we look at in the application when you do apply, okay? So with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it over to I believe, Brian, you're up next.
Hey, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you to Director Whitfield for inviting us. And Peter for speaking. This is an incredible opportunity for us. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Can everybody see that? Okay. All right, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about acquiring a Class B sports wagering license in Washington, D.C., how the process can seem intimidating at first, but once you get into the meat of it, if you can navigate it in the proper way with the proper folks and support behind you, it's really not that intimidating. Peter touched on some items that I will touch on, and I can kind of skip over those because he hit them already. the first is the phase one is planning, right? You can't jump right into this. You have to ask yourself, is this right for me and my business model? As Peter mentioned, it could be a coffee shop, a bookstore, a restaurant and bar. Uh, the thing that attracted us to it for Grand Central is that it's not going to change our business model. It's an addition to it. It's another entertainment option for our customers. So in my opinion, you can't say, well, we're going to change our bookstore, or we're going to change our restaurant, or we're going to change our coffee shop to a sports book, and it's going to take over. I don't think there's enough data already. As Peter mentioned, we're the first in the country. So that's a, no pun intended, that's a risky gamble for you to say it's going to take over your existing business model. It should be a complement to what you already do. Number two, what are my options? Again, Peter touched on that. Class B. You can also have a kiosk provided by DC. If Peter wants to talk about that next up, he can. I'm kind of going to graze over it for now. But your options are, for now, Class B. And then can your business afford this? So there is a financial investment here. I don't want people to think that, oh, I just fill out this application online, and boom, it's free and we can set up and get running. I've had some phone calls from folks who asked me, how I did it and what's involved, and I start to get into it. And there's really not a lot of knowledge out there, which is why we're doing events like this, which leads you to what exactly is involved. So the first answer to that is research. You need to hop online. The OLG website is amazing. It gives you a ton of information. Hop on that website and start to research what exactly is involved. And you'll find the first thing you need as a Class B operator is a management service provider, or an MSP. And that leads me to phase two, choosing an MSP. For me, again, the majority of this presentation is my experience and what I feel is the most important, in my opinion, after going through this. Choosing an MSP for Grand Central was the most important part of this process. You have lots of options. Sometimes you have people knocking down your door, whether it's William Hill or FanDuel or MGM or DraftKings or all these different folks who want to get involved. My first recommendation is to get an attorney, whether it's your ABRA attorney, whatever attorney that you use for your business. Talk to them and talk to them about what you're trying to do with an MSP, because there's going to be a lot of paperwork back and forth. And unless you're a lawyer and comfortable with reviewing those documents, I would definitely get a lawyer. Vetting the MSP. When we spoke with Ellis, the first thing I did was make some connections, call some people here and there who know the gaming industry, and ask them, hey, have you heard of this company? They're out of Europe. They're not Caesars out of Vegas. They're not, DraftKings out of New York or whichever, Atlantic City. Who are these people? What do you know about them? Put your due diligence in to vet the people that you're going to business with. These are your partners, right? Just like in a relationship, you don't hop into one without doing your research. This is a relationship. Vet the company and make sure you've done as much research as you can to understand who they are and what they do. And lastly, there's an aspect here where you just trust your gut. And when I had my options on the table, I just had a gut feeling that Ellis was right for us. And my gut was right. Ellis has been incredible during this process. I couldn't be happier with choosing them as my MSP. So that phase two, that MSP, you need to take your time and don't just rush into bed with one. Take your time, get a lawyer, vet them, and trust your gut before you make a decision. The application process, Peter touched on it briefly. That $100,000 application fee that Peter mentioned, this is important. It's non-refundable. That means that if you go through the process and do not get the license, you lose your $100,000. I don't want to scare people away. I just want to make sure they understand that, because whenever I talk to somebody, they're like, really? That doesn't sound right. There's a lot of work that the OLG has to do when vetting you and your MSP. Those things cost money, due diligence, research, which we'll get into later. It's a $100,000 non-refundable application fee. Next up in the application process, after you understand the financial part of it, document acquisition. For folks like small business owners, as you can see, we're in my office, which seems kind of hectic. Keeping track of documents may not be some of our strong suits. Document acquisition for the application process is probably the biggest part that you can control. Having everything, taxes, P&Ls, audits, your personal finances, personal background. There is a multi-jurisdictional history data report that's 64 pages long that asks you questions about everything you could ever imagine. And it takes time and patience. And it's a big lift. Some of it's tedious, but it's necessary and important to the application process. The DLSBD component, Peter did a great job in his presentation of describing the CDE 35% requirement. Again, it sounds like, oh man, that's a whole big thing. The DLSBD is amazing at helping you through this process. All the agencies involved in this process are on your side. It's not adversarial. They're your teammates. They're helping you. So don't feel intimidated by the process. Talk to folks there. They can help walk you through the CBE prerequisites. The compliance side. Part of the application process is making sure that you're compliant with what's called the MICS, the Minimum Internal Control Standards. It's how you're going to operate, how the District of Columbia and the OLG want you to operate your business. From the resolution on your cameras, right, to the security of your keys, to the infrastructure of firmware and your firewalls and your technology. It's the whole gamut. And this is where, as I kind of took a step back and was like, this is way over my head. And where Ellis came in, for lack of a better term, held my hand through it, and they take the lead on compliance because they have the experience. And it's necessary for you to take the lead, to follow the lead of the MSP, right? Because they're there to help you. They have the experience and they can help walk you through compliance. It can get overwhelming and frustrating sometimes, but there's a patience you must have in leaning on the people that you vetted earlier and that you trust to lead you through the process. And then obviously the third party, the OLG, who's going through the application process with you. I've been in DC 20 plus years and dealt with a lot of agencies in the district. And I've gone through a lot of application processes and permit processes. I could not have been happier with OLG. I'm not saying that because they're on the call. I've said it in every interview since. I said it during the process. The transparency of where you're at in the application process, what you need, how they can help, right? What mistakes were made, what red line edits they have. You know, when you submit a document, they'll red line it. It's incredible. There are a lot of great people over there. They assign you a lead to help walk you through the process. And it's a constant flow of information from you, meaning the Class B applicant, with your MSP and the Office of Lottery and Gaming. And if you keep those lines of communication open and honest, it will make the process a lot smoother. Next, and very important, is to understand this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You are not going to put your application in on Monday and have it in 2 weeks. This is a 6 to 9 month process, in my experience, minimum. And that's not because OLG is slow. That's because this is a highly regulated industry that we are the first, right, at the District of Columbia to offer the Class B operator. So it's not their fault. It's not our fault. It's just that's the nature of the beast. It takes a long time. So you need to be patient and be ready for document acquisition, back and forth, and understanding compliance and what's necessary. The execution. I can kind of move faster through these because that's the important part, is getting the application and understanding that. Prepping your building. This talks about security, the cameras, understanding that you're going to need different key controls, and understanding the surveillance and security that's necessary in your building. Where are you going to put the kiosks if you plan to have kiosks? Prepping the the firewall, as mentioned earlier, in technology. Do you have the proper bandwidth? Do you need to upgrade, call Comcast and upgrade your bandwidth? These are things, again, that the MSP can help you walk through. Hiring staff, as we know right now, hiring staff is incredibly difficult. Well, try hiring staff in an industry that doesn't really exist yet, right? So obviously you want to hire people with experience, but we're the first. So how do you do that? So you can get creative in your hiring. I called some people that I know in the gaming industry, friends of friends, and they offered me some suggestions. We talked to headhunters. We talked to people in Vegas and Atlantic City. You have to be creative. You have to think outside the box if you want to hire staff with experience, because again, we're the first in DC, and outside of Caesars / William Hill, you don't have a lot of places where you can look to for experience. Marketing and PR, word of mouth is great, social media is great, but I would highly recommend hiring a marketing and PR team to get the word out, to understand that you're out there. Again, these Class A's are billion-dollar companies, and they're outstanding at what they do. And you turn on TV, and there's Jamie Foxx doing Caesars on your NFL game. I'm not going to be on Monday Night Football. I can't afford a $2 million commercial. So you need to hire a marketing PR firm to hyper localize your marketing, and understand that through, lack of a better term, guerrilla marketing. Get your voice out on the street and let people know that you're open and accepting bets. Honoring your internal controls. Some people think, well, I did my application, my internal controls are 200 pages long. They put it up on the shelf and they don't touch it again. You cannot do that. Don't take shortcuts. Honor everything you said you're going to do in your internal controls, and understand that the OLG is your friend. They aren't adversarial. If they come in and see something that you may not be doing properly, they're going to pick you up. They're not going to put you down. They say, hey, we noticed that in the internal controls, you said you're going to do this. We're seeing this. What can we do to fix that? So they understand it's a first-time experience. We understand it's a first-time experience. So we're working together to honor your internal controls and do everything the right way. Last but not least, do not be intimidated by the process. I hope that the presentation didn't scare some people off and like, oh, that's way too much for me. It sounds like a lot, but as with anything, communication is the key to success. Honesty, having a good partner, and transparency with your agency. So it's a constant flow of information between OLG, you, the Class B, and the MSP. So don't be intimidated and go for it. And with that, I'll pass it. I think Matteo is next.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brian. And let me share my screen, please. Let me, first of all, can you please confirm you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes,
All right.
that's great, Matteo.
Fantastic. So first of all, thank you very much to DSLDB and the OLG for having us here today. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to explain a little bit better to the business community in Washington, D.C., who we are and how we were somehow contributing at the process of launching Grand Central in Washington. Clearly, this is, in my opinion, a very pioneering experience, and I need to congratulate the DC Lottery and OLG for embracing such an innovative distribution model. And this, in my opinion, is the beginning of a fantastic growth that the business will see, the sports betting business will see in Washington, D.C. And will represent, in my opinion, also a model that many other jurisdictions will adopt in the future. So I want to really congratulate Peter for the fantastic job he did in orchestrating this model that finally will see the light in the next hours. That said, who we are an end-to-end gaming technology company that provides a sports betting solution for the land-based and digital gaming operators. We operate as a B2C operator in the European markets, and as a B2B provider of technology in North America and in Latin America. The fact that we are a B2C operator, very much like Brian is today, give us really the higher ground to understand intimately the consumer and how to operate a sportsbook. So the idea here is to take our knowledge and our expertise and bring it at the service of the operators in Washington D.C. And this is what we did with Brian. Brian mentioned that this was very much a marathon, and it was indeed. We've been working for over 18 months on this program, and now finally to see that it's going live is super exciting for us and I'm sure for Grand Central and all Washington. Now, very quickly, we generate approximately $500 million in wager every year, approximately $40 million in revenue. We are very focused on expanding in the US, and we are a publicly traded company that is capitalized in approximately $120 million on the Nasdaq stock exchange. Let me very quickly explain you why we think these kind of partnerships are obviously very productive in the sense of business, but at the same time something that although is complicated is doable. And where is really the business opportunity? Well, the idea here, if we look at the F&B business, is that you can really leverage your existing operating model, and with minimal effort compared to what you established already. And I'm talking now, obviously, at the partners that are interested in stepping as a Class B operators in this segment. You can overlay on top of your current processes and on top of your location sports betting operation. Clearly, you need to identify who is your technology partner. You need to hire people. You need to revisit some of your processes. You need to maybe do some construction in your location to make sure that you are consistent and you operate consistently with the minimum internal control standards that OLG requires, but it's doable. It's absolutely doable, and it's an incremental effort on what you already have done. What we offer at this point in time is the ability to provide into your location several distribution channels to promote sports betting. The first one is the so-called point of sales. So you will have what we call a cage, or a location where you will be able to set bets and pay out the bets. There will be also self-service kiosk across the location where you will allow players to place bets in completely autonomously way. And we're working with Brian and with OLG in expanding the offering, including also auxiliary wagering device and potentially mobile on-premise. So the ability of allowing players to place bets through tablets that are in the location, or even through their own mobile devices, provided they are within the premise of the location. These are obviously future developments, but this is where we believe the player adoptions will evolve. And we believe this is very important because what we are trying to build here to the benefit of the Class B operators, it's really a new form if you think of entertainment. The ability to go into a location like Grand Central, watching your college team with your friends, and while you're there, place a bet and exchange ideas and thoughts about the betting markets, and makes the experience of being in that location much more entertaining than what it is today. And we're doing this because we believe there is a big opportunity of maximizing the footprint that you typically have already in that location. Not only by adding sports betting into your current business, you will be able to generate incremental revenue by cross-selling to your customer base the sports betting product. But also, you will be able to upsell more food and more beverages, because people typically will stay longer because they feel engaged into the experience that they are having at the location. But you're also capable to attract new customers that potentially will come to your location precisely because you offer this unique form of experience. So as you see, it's a very I would say challenging exercise to execute, although is not super impossible or super complicated compared to what you already have and what are your infrastructure and processes. Obviously, it's an element of complexity, but the reward that you can generate and the value that you can extract from that experience is very, very significant. Clearly, as Brian mentioned before, this is something that can only be done in strict collaboration with OLG, the DC Lottery, and the SLDB. The SLDB has been an absolute important partner in this process because it gave us the opportunity also to have access to local businesses that we have employed to allow Grand Central to go live. And it's an exercise that would require some time, but not impossible. And I believe that the benefit of having this new model at your location is going to be much greater than the effort that you put in there. So with that, I give back the stage to Peter, I suppose, right?
Yes. Thank you, Matteo, and thank you, Brian. That was great. I think you gave some good insight into the challenges that you face coming into a new area of gaming here in the district that has the district itself always has its challenges due to the makeup of the district. So I'm gonna get going a little bit. I'm gonna talk about the licensing process from my perspective, the regulator perspective. You heard Brian talk to on the challenges that he faced in applying and going through the application process. And as I do that, please, if you have questions, you see the chat. Unfortunately, we can't unmute everybody because it would get a little crazy. But please put it in the chat, and then at the end, just if you have a question for Brian, for Matteo, put it in the chat, and we'll address those at the end of my presentation here, and we'll go into it. Okay. All right. So let me again try to share my screen. Go on. All right, I'm going to skip through because we already went through these. Okay, so how do I apply for a Class B operator license? Let's start off with those right now. And first off, the application process, it's completely online. And so if you look at the chat right now, we've put in the chat 2 links. One link is to the application page, which kind of gives you a little bit more detail about the process. And then the other link is actually to the what we call the application portal, where you'll set up an account, and you don't have to do, when you set up the account, you don't have to do the application all in one seating. In fact, it may take you a month. I've seen some where it takes them a couple of months to actually get a completed application and finally hit the submit button, button. But you can see that on that. So, but before starting the application, and Brian covered this a little bit, a couple of things that we're going to ask for that you should just go ahead and prepare yourself for, okay? And it seems like a lot, right? But these are some of the things you need to start gathering this documentation. As I think Brian said, when you're talking about the Class A's tend to be, publicly held companies or large companies. Actually, maybe not, unlike Mateo and Ellis, where they have a lot of this stuff already because they have other reporting requirements to other regulators. But for others here in the district, make sure you have, put together, gather up your licenses, who the owners of the businesses are, your business structure that you have, and adverse information, I call it. But it doesn't mean that if you have this adverse information, it's going to deny you a license, but we're going to ask about it. So if you've had a bankruptcy in the past, if there's some regulatory violations or penalties, have that information available, because we're probably going to ask for it in the application as you go through it. Other licenses, if you have other licenses and permits, you may have, I think most in the district that are applying have an ABRA license. And so, we're going to contact ABRA. A business description of the business. What are you going to, what was the business, and what's your plan, your overall plan? And it doesn't have to be the exact one. As Brian, Mateo have noticed, there's an interaction that goes through after you file the application. We're going to ask for documentation. It's an interactive process. And who are the key personnel associated with the businesses, right? Who is going to be who's going to be the key person that own the business or associated with that are going to be making the business decisions for the operator, okay? Distributions and contributions to the company funds, how are they going to be distributed? Who has ownership over them? Financial interest, if there's major creditors that you have, or others that are, quote unquote, silent partners that may have invested in the company, we need to know who they are. Your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, your financial statements, your bank statements, tax returns, audit reports. Some of this, Brian went over. Facility agreements. If you don't own the building, and you have a landlord agreement with the owner, we want to see that. So you could see how, you start gathering up all this documentation, because as you go through the process of applying online, it's going to be information that we're going to ask for, and we're probably going to ask you to upload documents to that, okay? And then once you submit it, there is the due diligence process begins. And here's where it's sometimes a little different than in other types of industries. Again, gaming is a highly regulated industry, not just because we have to comply with the regulations that are here in the District of Columbia, but there's also federal regulation that applies to casinos, sports books. And so, it requires an extensive background check. And what does that mean? All gaming licenses applications will require a background. So the company that's applying, it's usually, the company, the entity, it will be applying for it, and we'll ask for stuff to get a background investigation on that. But we will also conduct the background on the owners of the company and the key directors and officers of the company. And what does that background investigation mean? One, there's a requirement that we have clean hands here in the district. It's usually for the Office of Tax Revenue, that the company's not owing the district any amount of funds, or there's not any delinquencies or anything like that. So, or if there's anything that's owed, it has to be paid up. You need a clean hand. It's a clean hands check, as we call it. Now, obviously, you have to have a basic business license to operate in the district. We do a credit review. We do a financial suitability review. And so this one's a bit more complicated. I could probably take a couple of hours on explaining this one, but it's basically ensuring, as Mateo and Brian explained, there's a risk. There's a risk to this. And so, I always say sports betting is a house bank game. And so, the players that are gambling are gambling against you in a sense, because you're making the payouts. And so financial suitability deals with, are you financially stable to be able to ensure that there's payouts, even if some days you have what we call a negative hold. Some days you don't, the players win more than you. You never know how the odds go sometimes, or what happens in a football or baseball game or something. So we do that financial stability to ensure that there's proper financial stability behind the company that's going to be doing this. We do the criminal history checks. We do a civil litigation check to see if there's any outstanding potential liabilities out there that's maybe currently in litigation. We do a civil compliance checks, other tax lien delinquent accounts. We review other gaming or professional licenses. And so, you see, again, we go over this stuff, and it's not like one thing, if there's some adverse information on one of these things, it's not like it's necessarily going to bar you from getting a license, but it's something we have to review to just review it to see how it impacts, how it might impact the sports book. Okay. Operational risk management. Okay. I'll just go real quickly, obviously, because I think Brian and Mateo covered this, right? That, what are the goals, the betting goals? It's obviously to increase revenue, food and beverage, and to bring in to the increase of other customers. A reminder that, sports wagering is a house bank game. This is, if you're familiar with poker clubs, that's generally not a house bank game. The players are playing against each other. In this case, the sports player, they're playing against the house. And so you make money when players lose. That bottom line, but they're getting entertainment. They receive entertainment. It's acceptable. I worked for the casino for several years, and people I wouldn't say they enjoy losing money, but they like the action, and it's entertainment. But you need to also be prepared to make payouts when the winnings that you're paying out are more than the actual wagers that came in. And so that goes back to the financial suitability what we go through during the licensing process. And then, we typically require a reserve to ensure that if something happens that, there's a big payout that you have to make to players, that there are some reserve funds in there to ensure that they do get paid. And so we go through that to the licensing application process. So really the bottom line is, while operating a sportsbook has potential great profits, and both, and when I'm saying profits there, I'm not just saying the sports wagering. It's like Brian indicated, it's providing a whole new sort of experience to your establishment that involves increasing in food and beverage, your customer base, and really providing a whole entertainment venue. It has risk, and it has risk. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from applying, but I just want to let you know that, and I think Brian said it right. It comes with risk, and so you have to do your own due diligence on your hand, just like he suggested. I think that was a great presentation. Do your own due diligence and vetting when you're getting ready that you want to do something like this. Okay. And with that, I just want to thank you. I just wanted to quickly put up my email address right there. So in case you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And I think our host, Lauren Atkins, who's been working in the background on this, will send out our contact information as well, so you can reach out to us directly. Okay. And with that, I think I'm done, and I'm just trying to. Oh, there we go.
Thank you very much to Peter and to Brian and Mateo, and also to directors Whitfield and Suarez for making the session work despite some technical difficulties. I think we're all in here now, and so we are ready to start accepting questions. And the first question we have is from Josh, who has asked, are there any requirements about ADA accessibility, occupancy of businesses, and hours of operations? And if anybody on the panel wants to respond to that, please do.
In terms of the ADA, I think the normal ADA requirements apply that already are in existence for bars and restaurants. So they do have to be, I think, ADA compliant. So.
And Marky has asked, will you have to be a certified installer?
I'm not sure if
I'm not sure what does it mean. What
yeah,
do you mean
we could
certified
follow.
installer?
So, okay, and Marky, if you get a chance to post more information about that question in the chat, go for it. Marky also asked, where do we find specific general OLG constructible code compliance to operate a Class B operation? Maybe
I would, yeah, I would suggest going to our website. It has a lot of the information regarding the application process, the requirements there. And I think it was Matteo or Brian made reference to the minimum internal controls. And that's also posted on our website. We make that with transparency, we make that information public on the requirement, on all the technical requirements.
Marky also had a question. Can you have a Class B license without having a physical address? Can you conduct online betting only?
No, you need to have a physical presence. The law, the sports wagering law here in DC requires that we license a location, physical location. Now, you could if you could have a physical location and only offer a mobile app, but it's going to be confined to your the sort of the four corners of your business and your facility. But right now, the law doesn't allow to have a sort of, I think what he's suggesting is maybe having a, like Virginia, where you have a mobile app that runs the entire state of Virginia, or in this case, the entire state of DC. So no, you're confined to the mobile app to your business. So you do need a physical location.
Thank you, Peter. We also had a question for Brian. Brian, why did you choose sports wagering as an addition to your business model?
I've always, Grand Central's always been a little bit of a sports bar with our Buffalo Bills loyalty. And over the past few years, people just it's becoming more and more mainstream. It's always been kind of taboo. It's happened since the Romans and the Lions at the Coliseum, right? Gambling's been around forever. And over the past few years, it's become more mainstream. And small business owners like myself, like, how can we get into that? It'd be a great, it's great compliment to what we do. We have the food and beverage, we have the facility, we have the TVs. Why not offer it? So it seems like a natural fit for what we do. And again, like we all keep saying here on the panel, it's a perfect complement and offers another feature of entertainment that works seamlessly with what we do.
Thank you, Brian. Josh has asked, can you give a range of the cash reserves, or at least the minimum expected for a business? Would it be 100,000, 1 million, or more?
Yeah, the cash reserve is really a function of what you anticipate your business to generate. So, any Class B applicant that we have typically is already, as Brian noted earlier, does their own due diligence and they do market research and they figure out what do we anticipate bringing in terms of total wagers for our business, and what do we think our what we call the GGR, the gross gaming revenue, after you make your payouts, your net, basically. What do we think we're going to be basing that on? And so the reserve is a function of that. It's like, for example, I can tell you that the reserve for a Class A facility over at one of the major stadiums is going to be higher than typically what we would see at a Class B. So it's hard to say. I mean, we do take a look at it, but we take a look at several factors, including how much you're going to be waging. So if your business model that you have is going to be bringing in handle at a certain level, well, whatever that level is, that's what we will base the reserve requirement on. So it is a bit of a complicated. We take several factors, but the revenues are one of them.
Thank you, Peter. Josh had a follow-up question for Brian, and I will preface it by saying it is a very proprietary question. So Brian, feel free to say what you do or don't want to. But Josh wants to know if you would mind sharing what Grand Central's cash reserve is.
Well, I believe, and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, there is a minimum requirement in the mix of 25,000. And then after that, it gets calculated by the amount of open bets that you have. For example, if you had 100 open bets and they were all to, the house was to lose them all, you would have to have enough to pay everyone their bet. So it's a constant fluid number that changes based on the number of open bets that you have. And your software, your management service provider can provide that's a feature of the software. It can spit that number out for you every day.
That's right. Let's see. Douglas had a question. Is the Office of Lottery and Gaming working with the Department of Small and Local Business Development to connected, interested, and qualified certified business enterprises with potential Class B license applicants in the district? And I would certainly like to say thank you for asking a perfect question. Yes, we are doing that. When you approach OLG, they forward your name over to our team here at DSLBD, and we will work with the applicant to help them identify where they can be hiring DC-based businesses, and then we will help them find those DC-based businesses. We have a question from Marky, who said, if you are currently a certified business enterprise in DC, occupying as a business other than a bar or restaurant, will you qualify for the license?
I think that maybe go back to, Class Bs are not limited to bars and restaurants. So if you have another type of business, again, I always use the coffee shop example, but it can be just about any other type of business. I believe in the legislation, it limited it to bars and restaurants. So yeah, you have another type of business that's operating, you could qualify. Now, I must say that there are, again, there's always restrictions, right? There is an exclusivity that exists with Class A's. The Class A's have what we call a 2-block exclusivity zone. So it's one of those that if your business happens to be within the 2-block zone of, let's say, the Nats Park, Audi Field, or Capital One Arena, then you can't. It doesn't matter what the business is, because the Class A's get that exclusivity of the 2-block zone.
Great. Kevin has a question for Brian. Does the Grand Central plan to expand its hours by opening early and staying open later for the different sporting events around the world? For example, European Soccer, World Cup coming up, etc.
Good question. So we're open naturally till last call, 7 days a week as allotted by ABRA. Obviously, we can't go past that. However, we've never been open for lunch during the week. And to your point, Kevin, we're going to open for lunch now. So the book opens at 10 a.m., closes at 1 a.m., 7 days a week. Our ABRA license allows us to start serving at 11. So we will open for lunch at 11 a.m. But the book will be open at 10. So you can come into Grand Central at 10. You can start to enjoy food and beverage at 11. So yeah, we definitely expanded our hours, definitely for soccer, World Cup, etc.
So since you mentioned last call, we're still getting some questions coming in. Michael wants to know, is there a growth forecast on how many Class B license holders will be in DC by 2022 or by 2026?
The statute and the regulations don't limit how many licenses we can issue in terms of Class Bs. How many are forecasted for those time periods, I'm not sure. we do get a lot of questions. We do get a lot of emails, and we have discussions with potential Class B applicants, and some start the application, but they, as I always say, it's not real until they hit that submit button and then pay the $100,000 fee. Then it becomes sort of real at that point. But we do make on our website, we do make public anybody who has submitted a Class B or any type of license that we offer. We do make that information public, so you can go on our website and you'll know who has submitted a Class B, Class A, or MSP sports wagering license application.
Thank you, Peter. And Marky has a question just for confirmation. Is it fair to say you can operate a full online sports betting with your current physical operation as a CBE? I think what Marky might be asking is, can you have sports betting in any physical business in the district? And that answer is yes, right?
Yeah, that would generally be yes. I mean, like I said, there's a couple of restrictions, the exclusivity zone around the Class A's, but other than that, there's if you have business. I mean, if you want, you could look at right now Nat Stadium. Nat Stadium is only offers a mobile app. They don't offer in-person betting right now or the machines. They're just offering a mobile app. So they're operating in sort of in that fashion.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I would say that for Marquee, you have to understand that if you were to have mobile betting, it would be contained within the four walls of your business. It's geofenced to your business. As long as you understand that, you can't bet from your condo. You have to bet within whatever physical address your business is in.
Thank you, Brian. That's a good point. Yeah.
Jan wants to know, is the Office of Lottery and Gaming open to proposals about new types of licenses? For example, Director Suarez, how would Office of Lottery and Gaming to a Class C? That makes sense. I'm not sure that question, we understand that question fully, so I'll say, feel free to direct.
Yeah, I mean, what I would tell you is that the Office of Lottery and Gaming doesn't actually create the laws behind them, right? And I think that those licenses are defined by the law. So I would tell you we're always open to, whatever new ideas, new thinking that you may have. Curious to know what a Class C would be. We don't have a Class C currently, but any new ideas, again, the main thing that we always strive for is we want to do what's best for the district. And opening up sports wagering in the district for businesses is an overall positive thing, and will help across the board. So always open to it, but let me just clarify that OLG does not create the law, and the law is what then distinguishes what licenses are available.
Thank you, Director. Josh has a question. Can a bar do a mobile-only sports betting app, geofenced, of course, and skip having a cage and kiosk?
Yes. They want to do a mobile only, they can do that.
And then Josh has a follow-up question. Do we have to offer physical cash payouts, or are bank transfers an alternative? He's thinking largely for security.
Yeah, I think in terms of the mobile app, it's all non-cash. It's been my experience of that. It all, people load their accounts, through either ACH transfers or even, some of these payment companies that are out there, and they load there and they get paid through that account. And so it's all non-cash. If you're going to offer live betting windows, I suppose you could offer the players, check payments for winnings, against that. But it generally, the players are probably going to want cash if they're giving you cash. They're going to want that in return. But I don't think there's any prohibition for that you offer them something different than cash. I'm just trying to think. I don't think the regulations that we have or anything say that it has to be paid in cash. Look at that again, but I don't think there is. So you could have other forms of payment.
Thank you, Peter. I think we are wrapping up on questions. Let me just do one last call for questions. Take one more question if anybody has a burning question for this extraordinary panel. And it looks like we are almost done. So I would like to take a few minutes to again thank Director Suarez and Director Whitfield, who had to leave early for another meeting, and Brian, Mateo, and Peter for providing such incredible information. You have generated the largest number of questions that we've had in any of these power hours, and the thank yous for all of your answers have also been filling the chat. So on behalf of everybody in the session, thank you very much for your great ideas.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Everyone. Take care.
And please, for the attendees, please watch for a follow-up email next week coming with a link to the recording and any other information that we want to add to it. Thank you all.